Hello. Hopefully you can see my screen. I think you can. Okay, so today's video is just going to be recorded for you. Last time we started reading the first chapter of the book Outliers, which is about what he calls the Matthew effect. So where we left off last time, he was sort of giving us the explicit argument. He's trying to argue that there's something wrong with the way we make sense of success. But he hasn't actually completed that thought because he's arguing that there's something wrong with the way that we make success, but he's not telling us what it is that's wrong. What is the thing that's wrong, or how could we fix it? That's sort of the second part of the claim that we need to try and follow up on. So you should have already written a soapstone for the first section of the text, and then add to it if you need to. So we're going to read pages 2 to 4, and then I'm going to kind of highlight some things as we're going. Afterwards, what you need to do is write a précis for this section. So take your soapstone, turn it into a précis. Remember, a précis can function as the introductory paragraph of your essay, especially if you get good enough at crafting it that you can put that thesis statement at the end. So if you're thinking about the traditional précis, and I will put a link on the classroom page so that you can see that format again. Usually you end with tone or a connection to the audience. If you're thinking about tear, relationship to the audience. But if you think about it, you can actually also flip that and make sure that that thesis statement comes last, okay? So he was telling us that this is a book about outliers, and then continues with saying, what is the question we always ask about the successful? Notice we've got another rhetorical question here. What we want to know is what they're like, what kind of personalities they have, how intelligent they are, or what kind of lifestyles they have, or what special talents they might have been born with. And we assume that it is those personal qualities that explain how that individual reached the top. So he's doing right now, he's sort of putting this idea in the audience's mind, but look at the word choice of we. So he's including us in his thought process, saying like we all had this misconception, not just pointing the audience out as not knowing or not understanding. He's saying that he had these misconceptions too. In the autobiographies published every year by the billionaire, entrepreneur, rock star, celebrity, notice how he puts these all slash, slash, slash. So just kind of lumping them all in together. The storyline is always the same. Our hero is born in modest circumstances and by virtue of his own grit and talent fights his way to greatness. So now we're going to get an allusion. In the Bible, Joseph is cast out by his brothers and sold into slavery, and then rises to become Pharaoh's right-hand man on the strength of his own brilliance and insight. We're going to get another allusion. In the famous 19th century novels by Horatio Algier, young boys born into poverty rise to riches through a combination of pluck and initiative. Another allusion. I think overall it's a disadvantage, Jeb Bush once said, of what it meant for his business career, that he was the son of an American president and the brother of an American president and the grandson of a wealthy Wall Street banker and U.S. senator. When he ran for governor of Florida, he repeatedly referred to himself as a self-made man. And it is a measure of how deeply we associate success with the efforts of the individual that few batted an eye at that description. An interesting side statement here. We so readily believe that individuals are responsible for their own success that we forget there's usually a lot of other factors, and in Jeb Bush's case, a lot of privilege that's pushing him into that role. Okay, let's keep reading. Lift up your heads, Robert Winthrop told the crowd many years ago at the unveiling of the statue of the great hero of American independence, Benjamin Franklin. And look at the image of a man who rose from nothing, who owed nothing to parentage or patronage, who enjoyed no advances of early education, which are not open, 100-fold open to yourselves, and who performed the most menial services in the business in which his early life was employed, but who lived to stand before kings and died to leave a name which the world will never forget. So this anecdote here, describing the statue of Benjamin Franklin, is sort of setting the stage for how he's going to advance his claim. So that's what he says next. So he gives us this really sweeping, broad, patriotic, you know, Benjamin Franklin speech, and then, or speech about Benjamin Franklin, and then he's going to expand his claim here. In Outliers, I want to convince you that these kind of personal explanations of success don't work. These explanations don't work. People don't rise from nothing. We do owe something to parentage and patronage. The people who stand before kings may look like they did it by themselves, but in fact, they may look like this, but in fact, they are invariably the beneficiaries of hidden advantages and extraordinary opportunities and cultural legacies that allow them to learn and work hard and make sense of the world in ways others cannot. It makes a difference where and when we grow up. The culture we belong to and the legacies passed down by our forebears shape the patterns of our achievements in ways we cannot begin to imagine. It's not enough to ask what successful people are like, in other words. It is only by asking them where they are from that we can unravel the logic behind who succeeds and who doesn't. So remember, his earlier explicit claim was, we measure success in the wrong way. And now he's adding on to it and he's saying, it doesn't help to think about what successful people do or what they're like. You need to ask where they are from, because you can understand so much more about how they got to their success if you understand their history. Biologists often talk about the ecology of an organism. The tallest oak in the forest is the tallest, not because it grew from the hardiest acorn. It is the tallest also because no other trees blocked its sunlight. The soil around it was deep and rich. No rabbit chewed through its bark as a sapling, and no lumberjack cut it down before it matured. We all know that successful people come in from hardy seeds, but we do know enough about the sunlight that warmed them, the soil in which they put down their roots, the rabbits and the lumberjacks they were lucky enough to avoid. This is not a book about tall trees. It's a book about forests. And hockey is a good place to start because of the explanation of who gets to the top of the hockey world is more interesting and complicated than it looks. In fact, it's downright peculiar. What is he doing in this last paragraph? It's a beautiful analogy. He's comparing success to the growth of a forest. It might be easiest to assume that the tallest tree in the forest was the best seed, it had the hardiest acorn, but really, it's all these other factors that allowed this tree to become the tallest, because there's no other trees, because the soil was deep and rich. There was no rabbits chewing it, no lumberjack cut it down. So that's what he's trying to do here. He wants to stop focusing on what makes one person successful and zoom out and think about what is the environment that made them successful, not how a person did it themselves. So now he's going to start with his hockey example. Here's the player roster from the 2007 Medicine Hat Tigers. Take a closer look and see if you can spot anything strange about it. If I were you, I really would try and stop here. Just look at the chart. Just try and not read the rest. Just look at the chart and see if you can notice what he did. It's kind of interesting. You sit and you just stare at it. Try and figure out what he noticed. Maybe you don't, maybe you won't, but he's going to tell us. So pause it here if you want to look. Do you see it? Don't feel bad if you don't. Notice here, this tone is very much like he's addressing us personally as the audience. Because for many years in the hockey world, no one did. It wasn't until the mid-1980s, in fact, that a Canadian psychologist named Roger Barnsley first drew attention to the phenomenon of relative age. So something about their ages here. See how he's sort of unleashing this slowly, piece by piece? He sets up the beautiful scene at the beginning of the hockey game. Then he tells us what the book is about and how people get successful and how we're going to zoom out. And then he's giving us this specific anecdote accompanied with a chart. He's giving us facts now. Starts out with that beautiful language, and now he's transitioning into facts. Barnsley was at a Lethbridge Broncos hockey game in southern Alberta, a team that played in the same major junior A league as the Vancouver Giants and the Medicine Hat Tigers. He was there with his wife, Paula, and their 2 boys, and his wife was reading the program when she ran across a roster list just like the one that above that you just looked at. "Roger," she said, "do you know when these young men were born?" Barnsley said, "Yes, they're all between 16 and 20, so they'd be born in the late 60s. "No, no," Paula went on. "What month?" I thought she was crazy, Barnsley remembers, but I looked through it and what she was saying just jumped out at me. For some reason, there were an incredible number of January, February, and March birthdays. Okay, so something about being born at the beginning of the year. Now, he's going to unravel this for us, but you should sort of start thinking about it now. What's going on with these birthdays? Barnsley went home that night and looked up the birth dates of many professional hockey players as he could find. He saw the same pattern. Barnsley, his wife, and a colleague, A.H. Thompson, then gathered statistics on every player in the Ontario Junior Hockey League. The story was the same. More players were born in January than in any other month, and by an overwhelming margin. The second most frequent birth month, February. The third, March. Barnsley found that there were nearly 5.5 times as many Ontario Junior Hockey League players born in January as born in November. He looked at the all-star teams of 11-year-olds and 13-year-olds, young players selected for elite traveling squads. Same story. He looked at the composition of the National Hockey League. Same story. The more he looked, the more Barnsley came to believe that what he was seeing was not a chance occurrence, but an iron law of Canadian hockey. In any elite group of hockey players, the very best of the best, 40% of the players will be born between January and March, 30% between April and June, 20% between July and September, and 10% between October and December. Notice how this is a story. We're still getting dialogue here, but the facts are infused into it. It doesn't feel unnatural. In all my years in psychology, I have never run into an effect this large, Barnsley says. You don't even need to do statistical analysis. You just look at it. Look back at the Medicine Hat roster. Do you see it now? And notice he's addressing the audience again. 17 out of the 25 players on the team were born in January, February, March, or April. Okay, now he's going to give us sort of a whimsical anecdote. Here is a play-by-play for the first 2 goals in the Memorial Cup final. Only this time, I've substituted the players' birthdays for their names. It no longer sounds like the championship of junior hockey. It now sounds like a strange sporting ritual for teenage boys born under the astrological signs Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So now he's doing this to sort of let us picture it. He's giving us the facts, and now he wants us to understand it. So notice how he beautifully transitions into this made-up story, this anecdote, this hypothetical, whimsical story. March 11th starts around one side of the Tigers' net, leaving the puck for his teammate January 4th, who passes it to January 22nd, who flips it back to March 12th, who shoots point blank at the Tigers' goalie April 27th. April 27th blocks the shot, but it's rebounded by Vancouver's March 6th. He shoots. Medicine Hat defenseman February 9th and February 14th dive to block the puck, while January 10 looks on helplessly. March 6 scores. And then again. Let's go to the second period now. Medicine Hat's turn. The Tigers' scoring leader, January 21st, slides down the right side of the ice. He stops and circles, eluding the Vancouver defenseman, February 15th. January 21 then deftly passes the puck to his teammate, December 20th. Wow, what's he doing out there? Who shrugs off the on-rushing defender, May 17th, and slides a cross-crease pass back to January 21st. He shoots. Vancouver defenseman, March 12, dives, trying to block the shot. Vancouver's goalie, March 19th, lunges helplessly. January 21 scores. He raises his hands in triumph. His teammate, May 2nd, jumps on his back with joy. So what I'd like you to do now is, now that we've read through this first section, there's still a little bit left in this chapter, and we're going to come back to it next time. Well, what I'd like you to do is write a précis. So add on to your self-study if you need to, and write your précis. Notice how his claim has sort of evolved here. That's what you're looking for. How has the claim been a little bit more specific and getting a little more involved? Okay? So submit your précis on Google Classroom. And then I can give you some feedback on it. Before we look at the next one, we're going to pull specific pieces of evidence. Have a good day.